Hey everybody, welcome back to Meet the Makers. Today, another great guest with us on the 3D printing side of things. I have Joe from Gilgarips. Joe, so excited to have you here. Thank you again for coming on Meet the Makers.
Oh, I'm excited. This is going to be great. This will be
Yeah.
my first official podcast. So,
Oh, I'm excited to break you into the world of podcasting. I'll start you off with a question that I start everybody off with. How did you get into 3D printing or just making things in general?
I'm a techie guy, so I've always had like a passing interest in like just any of the cool tech. A buddy of mine had a 3D printer, and he'd been using it to make just some things for our gaming table where we play our tabletop games. So, one day for Father's Day, I asked my wife. She's like, what do you want for Father's Day? And I was like, oh, a 3D printer. This is when the Ender 3s were $99, so they were cheap. So I got an Ender 3. That's where I started. And I had these grand plans. I was going to print out all these like tabletop things and buildings and miniatures and all that other stuff. And then working on an Ender 3, I was definitely working on an Ender 3. So
Yeah.
it was a lot of maintenance, a lot of learning, I think on my initial printer, I printed one set of things for the gaming table, and we never ended up using them. And then, so what got me into this selling of the stuff is we started with cookie cutters, actually. My wife asked me, hey, can you make a middle finger cookie cutter for my mom? And so I was like, yeah, sure, we'll do that. So then we went up north, and when we go up north, we're like 6.5 hours north from where we are. My in-laws live on an island. And so there's no internet, no cell service, nothing like that. We get spotty service. So when we were in town, my wife got the idea she was going to post those cookie cutters on Facebook Marketplace. She did, and went over the weekend, and we ended up selling like 40 of them. And here I was with one Ender 3. So we ended up going to Micro Center. Long story short, one printer turned into 3 printers turned into 4. And I think at my largest, I think I had 17 Ender 3s in my fleet.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot of maintenance right there. For anybody who's never printed on an Ender 3, hearing that just gives me nightmares right off the bat. Similarly to you, I started an Ender 3 V2, and very similarly, I had a small houseplant shop at the time. I thought I was going to print like pots for the shop. And instantly after I loaded my first print and saw that it was going to take 24 hours to complete, I was like, okay, this is not practical here.
No, I ended up taking, I think I've been doing this for almost 4 years now. After the first couple of years, I took a 6.5 to 7 month break because I was just burnt.
Yeah.
And I didn't print anything at all. I had a whole room in the house just silent with no printers or anything like that going because I just couldn't do the maintenance. And because it was almost 4 hours worth of maintenance every night.
I believe it.
It was a lot.
When you got up to those around 17 printers, were you running all Enders at the time, or did you have a mix of things? What did that setup look like?
I did. I had 17 Enders, and then I sold off a couple of them, and then I started replacing them with the Anycubic Vipers because those were like the next best thing. So I slowly got those. And I think the busiest that I had, after I sold off those Enders, I think I got down to 12 printers total, and those were pretty much running constantly. And that's when I had a pretty rough show schedule that year. I ended up doing Motor City Comic Con one year. That was pretty. I do miss like the being able to do 14 different prints at a time, but that's one of the things you get. You get the print diversity when you have all of those different machines. So I could run 17 different prints at a time. It would just take me just to do
the entire day to run them. Yeah. It's funny you say that because when I got my first P1P or my only P1P, that was like a calculation I did in my head because at the time I had 2 Enders, and then I had 2 Snap Makers as well. And I was like, for the price of these, I could get one printer, but I'm only going to be able to run one thing at a time, but it's going to print 3 times as fast. It was like that exact equation of, is it worth it to just have the one that is way faster? In my experience, having the Bamboo just has made 3D printing an absolute game changer in terms of, I'm sure, like you were saying with the 4 hours a night of repairs and things like that, it's probably not even like night and day.
Yeah, even when I went from the Enders to the Vipers, just the difference in maintenance between those, just having that stable bed and just like a reliable auto leveler and then a reliable feeding mechanism and a reliable hot end.
Yeah.
Like just, you don't have to deal. I don't think my Vipers, I don't think I ever got a clog, but maybe a couple of times on that. And usually that was some combination of my fault from doing something wrong. So like putting in PETG and running it at PLA temperatures and trying to get it to work.
Yeah, obviously I'm preaching to the choir here, but I'm having flashbacks listening to you just talk through all the repairs here. In your experience, obviously you've probably fixed just about everything on those printers at this point, but Was there anything that you found to be the most common issue, or was there anything that maybe you started doing when you had that many printers that helped you not have to do as much maintenance, or was it just nonstop regardless?
Direct drives. Direct drives were the godsend for the Ender 3s. It was the direct drives and then putting the solid bed spacers on there. Once I got the springs off of the beds, that was a game changer, because then once you get the springs off of the bed, then your bed's one solid thing. Then the auto leveler actually works, and you're not fighting the springs and fighting the auto leveler and everything like that. It's just, those were the two best things. And then I think coming in a really close third would be the dual Z rods, getting it so that your gantry doesn't tilt, because that was a big problem with the Enders. Once they got some use into them, some of the threads would sag and you'd have a slanted gantry, and that's never fun.
I went almost a step farther, and at the time it was my first 3D printer, and I was just excited to upgrade stuff. I think there's like upgrading that can help your prints, and then I just got to the point where it was upgrading to being not beneficial. It was just making things run worse, and I think that's always my caution for people getting into new 3D printers. I always say like springs, easy, couple dollars to upgrade, but after that, I say wait it out a little bit before you go crazy, because there definitely is the world of over modifying your printers too.
And I went through that too, because I was convinced at one point that everything needed to have the bimetallic heat breaks and all that other stuff. So I was buying parts and swapping things out, and then it got to be like a second full-time job at that point in time. And I'm like, I'm supposed to like doing this. This isn't supposed to be causing me stress and making me like want to throw things across the room.
Yeah. I think especially with 3D printing, it was one of the reasons why I'm thankful that I didn't get into selling, is I think there's a level of stress that comes with the fact that, you can start that print and you think it's going to go great and everything's going to be fine. You walk away, and it seems like printer issues are 10 times more likely to happen when you're not watching the print.
I remember there was one morning that almost broke me, because I had started, I think I had started like 8 prints, and I had spent a couple hours in there getting everything all leveled, all the beds tuned in and all the settings dialed in, even did like E-step calibrations and all that other stuff. I woke up the next morning and every single one of the prints failed. I was printing in the air on every single one of them. I was just like, I'm done with this room for today. So
yeah, I can't even imagine as somebody who's trying to prep for shows or trying to get things out the door. That's got to be a rough one.
Yeah.
Now, more recently, I can see behind you, it looks like maybe we got some K1s back there. But
right now, I have 5 printers in my farm. I've got the 2 K1s that you see there. I've got an A1 Mini, and I've got an A1, both with the AMSs. And I have a CR30. But the CR30, that's the belt printer from Creality.
Oh, okay. Those ones, I've been curious about those. I'm not sure if there is much of a novelty, or can you just run, let's see, on that printer, could you load 5 files at a time and just have them go?
It's great for batch printing. I actually have a Sonic pad on that as well, so I can get it to run. It doesn't run quick.
Yeah.
It runs I can run it at about 200% reliably with the Sonic pad. But admittedly, since I've rearranged my office, the CR30 is pretty much a shelf right now. I need to get that one back into production so I can start doing some things. But it's definitely fun to print with. It's a pain in the ass to calibrate, though.
I've seen that printer in your content, but I always wonder that if it was something where like maybe you could only load one at a time, or if it was something where you could really just let that bad boy go and just keep cycling prints off of it. The
largest thing that I can do is, I don't know if you're familiar with the Matt Meyer ball python or the snake that Cinderwing has.
Yeah.
But if I do that, I can get that up to 10 feet long, and it would be about 6 inches in diameter.
Damn. That's going to be like, do you know how many spools off the top of your head of filament that?
3,000 kilograms of filament.
Okay.
It's three rolls of filament. So
that's a big snake.
I don't trust the printer enough to do a print that long. I think that's 14 days of solid printing. So
yeah, I feel like there's just endless things that could go wrong in that scenario. So I don't blame you for that. But I will say a 10-foot long Fluxy sounds like right up my alley of something. Yeah,
I'm there. I'm this close to getting it reliably. If I can get about 6 or 7 prints off of it before I have a failure, then maybe I'll run the gamble on it if I can find some cheap filament to run it through. So
yeah, for sure. Now, that kind of comes into something interesting. Again, I know you do a lot of shows where you're selling in person, and in seeing that, I see a lot of people who sell in person, and I always find it really interesting what they stock at their table. For you, obviously, as somebody who 3D prints, the idea of this like super massive print is really cool and really fun, but how do you decide out of all the files out there, how do you decide what you are and aren't going to stock at your booth for shows?
The markets that I do are generally, they're like family things. So I do the things that are going to catch the kids' eye. I'm the person that the parents hate because I always have the cool things at the table. So I try to gear the stuff towards the kids. So I like the fidgets and things like that. And I have 3 or 4 different price tiers. So I have a $5 section, a $10 section, 15, 25, and then everything that's over that. And I usually split it up into a fidget and like flexi section, and then I have a tabletop like D&D section and stuff like that. As far as deciding what to print, it's Cinderwing and Flexi Factory are what I print. I've started recently though breaking out into, I do have a few designs that I do on my own, but I'm not like a great designer. I've got a pixel chess set that I designed. Nice. And I have a couple of dice holders out there. I did a collab with a dice tower with Stephen Lightspeed.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I don't know if you saw his castle dice tower. He has a castle dice tower with a dice holder on the top. That was his first dice tower that he did, and him and I worked on that one for about 3 days. So that was a fun project. I try to do the fun colors. The quick change rainbow sells really good, and then I try to do just a lot of the color change filament and stuff like that to get those cool colors out there.
I always think back to right before I got my 3D printer, and I know leading up to it, that was the thing that I was the most excited about, was printing with rainbows and printing all the crazy glitter filaments and all that stuff. So it makes sense that, especially for little kids, that they'll see that on the shelf and be gravitated to it. As I get more into printing, I definitely, again, as somebody who just prints as a hobbyist, I find myself, everything loaded in my AMS right now is boring. It's like black, white, and brown inside of there now. So I've gotten away from that as a hobbyist. But yeah, for sure, I can definitely see from a standpoint of selling, it's those rainbow filaments are super cool.
It's funny you say that, because I don't think I've actually ran any rainbow or like dual. All of my AMS has been solid colors. I think I have a polar filament. Yeah, I have a Martian blue, which is like a little sparkly blue. I was doing some like Detroit Lions themed stuff with, but that's it. Other than that, it's been solid colors. I think with the AMS and the ability to do the multicolor, you don't really need it as much. But my K1s, they run the multicolor stuff all the time. I think I actually have rainbow loaded on the one with the circle on it there.
Between the K1s and it sounds like you have the A1 Mini and the standard A1, do you gravitate towards liking one of those printers more, or are they pretty comparable for you?
To be honest with you, I haven't had any issues really with the K1s since Creality has fixed the problems from launch. When I first had my K1, they were a nightmare. But since the upgraded parts have been on there, they work just as reliably as the A1s do. Those are the ones that I do my prototyping on. Those are the ones that ran my pixel chess set here. But yeah, I really like the K1s. They're great. And with the updates that Creality's done to their Creality print software, I know everybody hates on it, but I don't mind it. It works for what I needed to do. So it works pretty much just like the Bamboo Slicer does now. What I really wanted to get is I wanted to get away from the SD cards. I can't stand the SD cards. Just the ability to send the print directly to the printer was just great without having to deal with swapping out memory cards. It's just giving me flashbacks to having memory cards that are labeled for which printer they go into, so I knew which files were on them.
I cannot agree more. It's such a small, stupid little thing, but for whatever reason, it feels so much work to have to put it into my computer, load up the file, bring it over to the printer. I lose them, I misplace them, I can't find the SD card for the printer I need to run, so yeah, it's huge.
I will not print something if I have to change filament. Like, it's stupid, like where you get where that executive dysfunction kicks in. You're just like, I want to print this dragon. Oh, I have to change the SD card. Never mind, that's too much. When in reality, it's an extra 30 seconds. Like, honestly, hitting the change filament button on the K1s, it's going to take it 45 seconds to heat up and spit the filament out, and then another 10 seconds to change it. So.
I'm so glad that's not just me, because I can't tell you how many times I've either needed to run a print or been waiting to run a print, and a week will go by because I have to swap out filament, which sounds so simple and so crazy. But
it is the dumbest. It is the dumbest thing and the dumbest excuse, but it's one of the hardest things to get over, is to swap that filament. It's one of the other things that I like about the AMS. In my brain, the AMS, I can queue up 4 prints because I have 4 different things of filament on there.
Yeah, it's funny you say that too, because I honestly, on my AMS, I've probably run multicolor prints 5 times max. I almost never run multicolor, but Exactly that. Being able to have 4 different colors in there at once, and just, I never have my Bamboo Studio color coded correctly, my AMS settings of what color's in there. So it's a gamble and a guess. But if it doesn't matter what color I'm running too much, I like that I could just have a couple in there and just send it. And I'll keep sometimes like a PLA, a PETG, a couple different types of filament in there just so I can get away with all my projects without having to do a swap in there.
Slots 1 and 4 on my AMS are generally for gray and black, almost exclusively, unless I'm doing a multicolor thing. And honestly, I haven't really done, I think the most multicolor thing that I've ran was the Flexi Factory's chess set. That's the biggest run of multicolor stuff that I did. And that was to get two of the chess sets done. It was 2 full days of printing.
Wow.
That's the downside to the multicolor stuff, is it takes a very long time. Usually I'll use it to color like the eyes on a dragon or something like that. And that way I don't have to paint it. That just holds me up. It's just, I have to paint the eyes on all these dragons. Oh, nope, these dragons just aren't getting their eyes painted.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. Because I hate running multicolor so much, I always tell myself I'm just going to run it in one color and then I'm going to paint everything else on. But then it comes time to painting it, and exactly that. It's a whole other additional stuff that has to take place.
Well, then you got to prep your work area. Then you got to get your water cup to wash the brushes, and you got to open your paints, and then you got another whole process of things. I was going to try to do airbrushing, but my airbrush sat in a box for a couple of months, so we just ended up returning it.
Yeah, my airbrush, it's a love-hate relationship with it, because anytime that I use my airbrush, it comes out great, and the results are unmatched to anything else that I'm going to use it for. But the downside is cleaning the airbrush is between every color that you have to change it out, and it's a process. So in the future, I would love if either somebody could figure out some way of maybe like a quick change pot on airbrushes where you could just easily swap out the colors. That's the biggest thing that I think for me is the biggest frustration with using those. And then it's like, again, coming back to the enders, it's like flashbacks because my airbrush is getting clogged. I'm getting frustrated and like ready to throw it across the room. So as much as I like the results of the airbrush, I don't use it as much as I thought that I was going to. But
it's the maintenance. We need to come out with an AMS for the airbrush.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I see, and maybe I was misunderstanding what it is, but it looks like, because again, you do the in-person like events, but it looks like maybe you have a dedicated market that you sell out of. Am I seeing that correctly?
Yes. Yep. So we do have what's called a maker's market, and it's like a permanent craft show is what it is. There's 25 to 30 other crafting tables that are in there. She was specifically looking for a 3D printer because her last 3D printer went away. We met her I was doing another show, and she actually had mentioned that she was looking for a 3D printer. And so nice. We went there, scoped out the booth. We've got a little thing there. So yeah, we have a permanent shop set up inside of there as like a little maker space. Plus she has like a showroom where we can set up a table and we can host an event if we wanted to host like a 3D printing event and stuff like that. She lets the crafters do that.
Yeah, it's something, I'm sure a lot of cities have it, but I don't see a lot of people who have access to those spaces. So I was curious how you got involved with that. But yeah, maybe it's something where people at shows just need to keep their ear to the ground and look out for something like that. Because it sounds like a cool opportunity to have that just like ongoing place to sell out of.
Yeah, and this is actually the second one that we were at. The first one we were at was a little closer and a little busier and a lot bigger. But we have a lot of those around here. The problem is they fill up really quick. So you've got to make sure you get in there, get on the waiting list and things like that. But yeah, there's a bunch of them around here.
I'd be curious to even just go check one out, just to go shopping there and see what other people have.
Yeah, they're actually like that thrift store that you go to where it has like the areas, except they're sectioned off. And have these numbered booths. Each booth is like a separate little storefront, and then you go in there and shop around.
That's cool. Now, I know you said that she could approach you because she was looking for another 3D printer. For you guys, once you're in there, do they not really have other 3D printer vendors come in there, or is it just free for all of what they have in there?
So the nice thing is when you go into these places, they have a genuine interest in wanting people to come in, so they don't want to have 30 of the same thing. So the larger ones will usually limit it to 1 or 2 of the same type of vendors. This one's a little smaller, so I don't think there's any overlap on the vendors. So it's like one of each type of thing. There's 25 different crafts that are in there, so there's not going to be another 3D printer. I'm the 3D printer. There's a woodworker. They have the tumblers there. There's a couple people that do their stuffies, t-shirts, and things like that. Jewelry.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's, like I said, like similar to going to that antique mall that I like to go to. I love just going places where there's a wide variety of selection, and I have a diverse variety of interests. It's fun to poke around at all the different booths and see what's going on. No, that was cool when I saw that.
And what we like about that is It's not as much money each month as it owes the show, but it's a lot more consistent. And what we don't need to do is we don't need to tie up a weekend. Like we can maybe go out there early. We usually go out there early on a Saturday. We'll go get breakfast and then we'll go stock the shelves there and then go from there. So I would love to get into several more of those places like that where I just have to run a bunch of stuff here and then just do a route and then just go stock everything up.
Yeah, no, for sure. Something I always in the back of my mind thought would be really fun, and I don't know how practical it would be, but like either the old school vending machines or the old school claw machines just exclusively filled with like dragons or some kind of 3D print in there. I feel it would be a fun attraction if you could get some kind of small business to let you put it in there. Yeah. Now, the other place I think you've recently started getting on and selling out of, do you guys do TikTok Shop, right?
Oh, yeah. We've been on TikTok Shop for, when did we start at TikTok? Have we been, since it came out, almost since the onset, we've been on TikTok Shop. So we've been on Etsy since we started about 4 years ago. We do a little bit on eBay and then TikTok Shop. But TikTok and Etsy are our two main venues.
Nice, nice. Yeah, TikTok Shop, I know for a lot of people, it's really been a game changer from the 3D printing side. And I feel like for 3D prints, it's great. I think it's great from a price point. It's something that a lot of 3D prints aren't crazy expensive where you can get that person looking either for the impulse buy or just it's not too cost prohibitive. But also, I think the content around 3D printing lends itself really well to TikTok Shop. So has it been, like for you guys, have you enjoyed being on TikTok Shop so far up to this point?
I love TikTok Shop. And it really, what is nice, it's not necessarily just like the TikTok, you have to take the TikTok Shop and TikTok together because it's really, what makes it so great is it gives you the platform so you can self-promote. You're not reliant on what traffic Etsy pushes to your shop or anything like that. You can actively say on this platform, I'm going to push my shop. Here's a link to the video. Here, let me show you my cool little doodah. Or this is my new dragon, or here's a chess set that I'm doing, those kind of things. And then the ability to do the lives and then put the shoppable links in the lives, like that's huge. When we would do the lives, we were selling $100 to $200 during the lives on this stuff. It was especially, and then Christmas time, it was crazy. There was one night, I think we did $600 worth of stuff. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to print all this.
Yeah. So that's the thing for you. So do you just, for like those orders, do you do print on demand would be the word that I'll use for that? Like you don't have them like maybe necessarily always stocked. You'll just, the orders come in, you'll print them after the fact.
So to do the listings, I always have at least one or two, depending on the size of the item. If it's a dice tower, I generally will only have one. If it's a dragon, I'll usually print 2 dragons because I can get 2 on the A1. Yeah, just depending on the item, but most of the time I have at least one of everything that's on the shop in stock, and then if somebody orders it, I'll usually print another one and then ship off the other one.
Gotcha. Have you found like they're looking to get into selling 3D prints? Do you find like managing inventory or deciding like what to have as inventory just like on hand ever difficult? And have you ever had a scenario maybe around Christmas time or Black Friday or anything like that where it's just been, you had some crazy scenario where you had to expand? It sounds like your initial cookie cutter was that scenario, but any other ones that come to mind?
So yeah, there was, for whatever reason, I want to say it was either last year or the year before, but for whatever reason, the Cinderwing butterfly dragon. I posted a video at during one of the shows that I was doing, and it just went. I got like 50,000 views on it. I hit the algorithm gods were in my favor that day. And so it was just like one after another. So I had the 2 K1s dedicated to those. And I think they ran for a week straight on just those ones. But yeah, there's been times where we've had just like that panic moment where we get like 6 orders in of something and I've only got a couple of them printed. So I'm like, all right, let's get this queued up. Let me look at what's the SLA on these? Let's see if I can get these done in time.
That's definitely one of those scenarios where I guess you have to push through the SD cards and the filament loading and all that stuff to get those out the door.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I guess like on the flip side of that, has there ever been any scenarios with prints where you thought to yourself, you're like, this is going to take off. People are going to love this. And then just it didn't work out?
Yes. I'm trying to remember what it was, but I've had this exact feeling where I would spend a bunch of time on it. Yeah. Actually, it was the Halloween monsters. I had, this was back when I was still with STL Flicks. I had printed some of the Halloween monsters and I was like, oh, this is really cool. And I had set everything up. And so this is when I was still running the Ender farm. So doing multicolor prints on the enders, I'm sure you know how fun that is. But these ones were all multiple parts. So I printed like a bunch of all these little parts, and I had 5 or 6 printers dedicated to all these things, and I put in just a ton of work on these things. And I got them all glued together and put up. And I was like, oh, these are really cool. Because they were all the old classic monsters like Frankenstein, the Mummy, the Creature from the Black Lagoon, Dracula. And they looked really cool. They were cute. And I still have them left to this day. And that was 3 years ago.
I guess it's right around the corner again. So maybe, maybe this is your year.
I know. I just sold the Frankenstein at our booth.
Oh,
and then I think I have the Mummy and the Werewolf left. It took me 3 years to sell through that. I thought for sure those ones were going to be great. I liked them. I thought they were really cool.
Yeah. I think one of the hard lessons that I've had in different online shops is there's always something that I think is just so cool and everybody's going to love. And it seems to be only me who thinks that thing is so cool. Yeah, I've certainly run into that before.
Oh, and I did another one too. There's a tabletop gaming table that I have too, that I spent 2 weeks printing the parts for, put it all together. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to showcase these at the shows. I'm going to do a couple of TikTok videos on these. I'll host a couple of lives where we played D&D on it and everything like that. I did all that and crickets, nothing. So.
Yeah. It's always tough when it intersects with like your other interests and intersects with something you're like really passionate about. It's like, oh man, that one hurts a little extra.
This is stinging a little bit. So I thought this was really cool.
Yeah, for sure. Now, when you guys do shows in person, do you run your 3D printers at the booth or do you like have them there with you?
So it depends. A lot of the places that we go, they don't have power available because they're outdoor shows. So if power is available, if I've done the show before and I know it's going to be a busier show, then yes, I'll bring one. But it's been a minute since I've actually brought a printer to a show. But right now we're not really we just did a show that I had committed to last year. I've got another show, I think, with the same person that I committed to last year that I'm doing. And then we've got our normal Santa shop ones and Christmas shows that we're doing for the high schools that are around here. But I've been doing more of the online sales and things like that, as opposed to the in-person shows, just because it's a little much to give up the weekends and everything like that. And I was a psychopath last year. I did 4 shows in a week, and I did a Sunday show, it was a Wednesday show, and then I did a Saturday show, and then I had another Sunday show, and I'm like, I don't want to do another show ever.
No, I feel like things like that are easy to get burnt out from. Are you guys, is this like your full-time thing that you are doing right now, or?
No, this is part-time. So this is just like a side hobby thing that generates a little bit of extra revenue for it. Full-time, I'm a software integration specialist for construction companies. I have a tech job during the day. So I get corporate Joe during the day, 3D printing Joe at night.
Yeah, no, I'm similar to you. I have my 9 to 5, but I work from home. So either way, I just sit here all day and either I'm sitting here 3D printing, making videos, or I'm sitting here doing less exciting stuff. But yeah, I feel you there. But especially when you have your full-time job going on, I'd have to imagine going to 4 shows in a week.
That was a rough week.
Yeah.
But actually after that week, I was like, no more during the week shows. That was doing a show during the week was a little rough because we had signed up to do a couple of Wednesday or Thursday shows, and I did it twice, and we only ended up doing like $300, and I'm like, it's not worth the $300 to take off work early, drive out here, set everything up, pack everything up, and then get home and essentially die for the rest of it.
Yeah, I feel like weekday shows are hard too, just because like everybody else is working for the most part. I feel like those shows are probably a little harder, and that's from a lot of people I talk to. It seems like you have to almost feel selective, and it's a little bit of living and learning of what shows perform well and what shows don't perform well over the years.
We've even gotten to the point where if we're going to sign up for a new show, we ask if they jury. How many of each vendor do they allow? Because we actually stopped. One of the easiest shows for us to do was our local farmers market, but we stopped doing those because there's 2 other 3D printers there. So we would have been the third one. We were the first, and then 2 other guys joined. And since it's a city-hosted farmers market, they can't really say no. If they have the space. So then we were doing decent. Then when the one guy joined, that cut our sales in half. And then when the third guy joined, and now we're only making a third of what we did before. So I was just like, we're just not going to do it anymore. And then we even checked it out to see if both of them were still doing it. And
it's ever evolving with business, but things like TikTok Shop coming out are a cool game changer. And like you said, the way that they rolled out the platform, I feel like they rolled it out in a really smart way. It's a very seamless shopping experience, whether you have the links directly on live or the links are directly on your video. Even as somebody I don't sell, but I make content around TikTok Shop, I will say I feel like they did a really great job with that platform.
Yeah, I have been happy with the TikTok Shop. I wish they would give us a little bit more time to process the orders, but it's fair. I know I was skirting the line when I don't have 10 of anything in stock, but I always say I do. But because I know I can print them before I need to send them out. But yeah, the TikTok wants you to have the item hat in hand before you do it. They want you to basically just get the order, box it up, send it out the next day.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it's a give and take, because I think for small businesses, it's hard to always have all that stuff in stock, and hard to, especially for a lot of small businesses, I think are people exactly like you, who they have their 9 to 5 and then they're doing this on weekends and they're doing this on nights. It's hard to always be able to, every single time that order comes in, instantly drop it. But what I will say on the flip side of that is, I think from the consumer side and from the buyer's standpoint, the fact that those orders do ship so fast and do arrive quickly, I think makes it a much more positive buying experience for
yeah, for sure.
the shoppers.
I 100% understand why they do it, because it's a storefront, so the storefront needs to cater to the customers.
Right.
Without the customers, nobody's selling anything. So you're right. It's the give and take. I would like to be able to say it takes me 5 days to process the order. TikTok's like, you've got to get it out in 2 or 3 days. And we're like, all right, I can make that happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like maybe over time, maybe as it like develops more, maybe it'll go more similar to Etsy, because I think on Etsy, they let you say 1 to 2, 3 to 5 or whatever.
Etsy lets you give the processing time for the orders on that one. So, and I've got that on my Etsy shop, I think 5 to 7 days, and I usually ship out within 3. So it's under promise, over deliver kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. We've talked a lot about different places that you sell out of, different things that have been successful and haven't been successful. Again, I think selling 3D prints is always something that a lot of people are interesting. Do you have any kind of final tips of things that maybe you wish you would have known when you got started, or just things that you learned along the way that are helpful for people who are just looking to get into the side of 3D printing?
So if you're just looking to get into it, you need to look at the features of the machine. Like, you need to make the decision on whether you want to be, if you're going to be a hobbyist and you want to know everything about 3D printing, or if you're just looking at it from a business aspect of it. If you're looking to start a business, don't get into it buying an Ender 3. And I know there's people that are going to disagree with me on that one, but if you're doing it for a business, just buy a Bamboo, and really any of the new gen printers, because they all have those features. They all have Wi-Fi, they all have auto leveling. They're all pretty quick now, and reliability is like the standard now, because that was always the big thing. Like, all of the printers beforehand, didn't you have the Snapmaker was one of your trouble machines, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a troublemaker.
Obviously, your Ender 3s and stuff like that, but you don't want a machine that's a troublemaker. So get something that's reliable. The reliability is going to be the king. That's really what you need on a printer, is you need something that's going to work when you need it to work with very little maintenance.
Awesome. I think whether you're getting into it as a hobbyist, or whether you're getting into it to go a more professional route, you will save yourself a lot of time and a lot of aggravation and a lot of filament spaghetti on your build plate if you get a more reliable machine.
If you think about it too, like, even all that, so it's great that I know flow rates and I know E-steps and everything like that, but honestly, all of that information is because none of the machines are running Marlin. They're all on Clipper. So like, the industry has just fundamentally changed. So all that stuff you're going to learn on the Ender 3 isn't going to apply to any of the modern machines once you switch over. It's just going to be stuff up here. You're going to be like, I know what the flow rate is on this machine, but that doesn't help me.
It's actually a funny thing you say, because I honestly, for even still, like, I do say to people all the time, if you're looking to get started with a cheaper option, like an Ender is a great option. You'll learn a lot. You'll figure out a lot. But that is very true. Honestly, like, a lot of the things I learned on my Ender, from it breaking and fixing it every day of the week, you don't have those issues really on the newer printers. So
you look at the Bamboos. The Bamboos all have linear rails. They don't use V-slots. Your P1P or P1S, it's a Core XY. So same with the K1s. The K1s are Core XY. So none of that is really relevant to what you're printing on. So
yeah, it's a hot take, but it's actually a good point, because there are always people who will battle me out still saying that the Ender is the best place to start. But I think you just made a good argument for...
I loved my Ender 3s. If it wasn't for my Ender 3s, I wouldn't be a 3D printer right now. I had a great time with my Ender 3s. It was fun learning how to modify them. It was fun going through and doing all the math and all that other stuff to figure out what the E-steps needed to be and your flow rates and all that stuff. Do I enjoy the fact that I can just go boop and my printer goes at this point? I do. I don't want to have to tighten belts and all that other stuff. So it's a trade-off. I do miss it sometimes, but I do have a couple of broken Vipers. If I ever wanted to go back to those days, I can go tinker with those.
Yeah, for sure. Final question I'll leave you off here with today. If we fast forward into the future and you think about either just your personal projects that you have going on or your shop and where you see things going, do you have a vision for how you hope for, I guess, your 3D printing journey to evolve over time?
So what I'm actually working on right now and what I'm hoping in the future is that I can have more of my own designs. I'm working in Fusion to start doing some more advanced projects and learning a lot more of the designing elements of it. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to differentiate you. If you can, in your business, you can have your own designs, or you're agile enough to adjust to customers' demands and things like that. Say, oh, I want a dragon, but can it go like this? And yeah, I can make it do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But rather than waiting for the creators that you follow or the Patreons you do, and even you look at Cinderwing, that's like the standard, right? So when I started printing, she had 600 members on her Patreon, right? And now she's got 4,500 on her Patreon and thousands more on her Tribes and Thangs accounts and things like that. So there's going to be that commonality. I don't know how many times I get asked at a show, oh, were you at this such and such show? Because I saw your dragons there. And I'm like, no, they're not my dragons. These are the ones that the 3D printers have. So like your Flexi Factories, your Cinderwings, while they're all great, everybody's got them. So there's not really much different there. So being able to design and do your own things that's going to be the game changer, and just being able to adjust to what your customers are asking for, or the ability to do custom orders and stuff like that.
No, it absolutely makes sense. And it's funny hearing you say that. She's got quite the following for sure, people who print those dragons. And there's out by me, it's like an outlet mall that I go to occasionally, but it's an interesting setup. They, outside of the outlet stores, they have little vendor booths there, and there's this family that they 3D print, but I always see the Cinderwing dragons there, and it's just, as somebody who 3D prints, it's funny because you see the stuff there and you know what it is. Everybody else just sees it, and to them, they probably think, oh, that's their dragons. So
whenever I go to a show, and I even did this because when I was at the Motor City Comic Con, I walked up and down every aisle, and every 3D printer I saw there, I would always ask him, I was like, oh, whose Patreon do you follow? Who's this model? Things like that. Because I can tell with the style of the design and stuff, oh, this is from Flexi Factory, right? Or is this Dow 3D? Or is this printer? Because they're Patreons that I followed in the past, or I'd see like a Matt Myers thing. Oh yeah, I really like Matt Myers thing. Do you have his blah blah blah? So
cool. Well, Joe, I totally appreciate you coming on today. I feel like you shed a ton of light on different things that you have going on with your shop, all the different places that you sell out of, and it was super great talking to you. So real quick, for people who don't follow you already but would like to follow you, where can they find you online?
So I'm primarily on TikTok. I'm at Joe Ripari on TikTok, or you can search Gilgarips 3D printing on there. You can go to linktree/Gilgarips 3D. That'll get you a link to all my socials. If you want to message me any questions about anything, I usually respond pretty quickly. We do a Facebook page as well, facebook.com/Gilgarips, stuff like that. But yeah, TikTok is primarily where I'm the most active. So
awesome. Go give them a follow. And with that said, that is Meet the Makers. Thanks so much for watching.